So UFC Fight Night Vegas 29, Korean Zombie vs Ige takes place in only a matter of hours, and these are my last minute detailed predictions for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event. I'm going to be going through my predictions for the fights, but not just who I think's going to win. I've already done that earlier this week. I'm calling out what the scorecards are going to be, how each round is going to play out, what submission will be achieved if there's going to be a submission finished, what limb will be used to KO an opponent. I'm going for everything here. I'm not just predicting fights, I'm putting it all on the line, starting with the early prelim opener of Casey O'Neill versus Lara Procopio. I'm going to go with Casey O'Neill getting this one done. I think there's going to be a lot of grappling exchanges here. I think in the first round, maybe Lara Procopio is going to have some success on the feet. Casey O'Neill's not going to be getting destroyed on the feet, don't get me wrong, but I think Procopio is going to do some good work on the feet, and I think she will win the stand-up exchanges against Casey O'Neill. But I think Casey O'Neill's going to work her grappling on Lara Procopio, man. I really like her grappling. I like her skill. I like the size that she has in the division. She's only 23 years of age, already 6-0, looking to go 7-0 here against Procopio. I like her range, and I think she's going to be able to sort of hide behind that, despite not being the better striker against Lara Procopio. But I think her size is going to come into play whenever she goes for takedowns, and I think she's going to win the grappling exchanges. At the end of the first round, she's going to end up on top. In the second round, she'll spend a lot of time on top and land some damage there. In the third round, I think it could be close to a 10-8, but I'm going to go over 29-28. Casey O'Neill, unanimous decision. I think even though she gets a takedown at the end of the first round, Lara Procopio is going to have landed too many shots on the feet, and I think the judge is going to still go her way with that first round. But other than that, I think Casey O'Neill takes over with her grappling, and I think she wins this one as the fight goes on. 29-28, unanimous decision. Moving on up the card, Joaquim Silva versus Rick Glenn. Again, I'm going to go over Rick Glenn here. I don't see a TKO happening. I think it's going to be another decision, but I think it's going to be a 30-27 unanimous decision. I think he's just going to be too big for Joaquim Silva here. I think he's going to go out there, land some good shots on the feet early, look real good early on, and then start to mix in some of those takedowns. And Joaquim Silva's just not going to have the strength to deal with a massive Rick Glenn. And I know that sounds weird because Rick Glenn used to be a featherweight and now he's the one moving up. But he is a massive man, and I think he's going to be able to manipulate Joaquim Silva against the cage, getting himself some takedowns, and also working him on the feet as well by being rangy, throwing a lot of kicks on the feet is what I think we're going to see. I don't think he's worried about Joaquim Silva taking him down, so I think he's going to throw a lot of kicks, a lot of front kicks, a lot of leg kicks, then go for his own takedowns at the end of each round, earning himself a 30-27 unanimous decision. Moving on up the card, Josh Parisian versus Roque Martinez. I'm going to go with Josh Parisian. And I'm going to go with Josh Parisian spinning back fist KO. I like Josh Parisian. I think he's going to go for it because he usually goes for it. And I think he's definitely going to go for it against Roque Martinez. I think he softens up the body of Roque Martinez early with some big shots. Maybe throws a couple of spinning back kicks to the body of Roque Martinez that pushes Roque Martinez against the cage. But of course, he's trying to aim for the body, which means Roque Martinez isn't even going to feel it, to be honest with you. I mean, even his second breakfast isn't going to feel that one if Josh Parisian does spinning back kick him in the body. And I think after that, Parisian's going to go for a spinning back fist and lay out Roque Martinez in the first round and finish him with ground and pound against the cage. First round TKO for Josh Parisian. I believe in him. Ground and pound TKO after a spinning back fist lands. I'm that confident he will go for it. Moving on up the card, Khaos Williams versus Matthew Semelsberger is for some reason on the prelims. I'm going to go with Khaos Williams, and I think I'm going to go with him by decision. I don't think he wins this one by KO. I don't think either guy wins this one by finish, in all honesty. I think Khaos Williams is going to go out there, be very patient, chop at the legs early, and just start working the investment shots as the fight goes on. I think Khaos Williams is going to be the better man in the third round, and I think that's kind of what's going to dictate this fight. Maybe they have a close first, but I think Matthew Semelsberger is going to be going for the head. Khaos Williams is going to be chopping at the legs, looking to land a jab. I don't think they're going to be swinging like crazy early because both men know they have the ability to lay each other out cold with one punch. And I think that's going to lead to them being very hesitant in the first round. Khaos Williams chopping at the legs. Semelsberger landing some good jabs, maybe some couple of right hands or something like that. But I think it's going to go to Khaos Williams in the first round. Then the second round's going to be quite close. Who knows how that one's going to go? I'm trying to guess that, I guess. Khaos Williams, again, sticking to his shots. I think this is going to be a very boring fight. in all honesty. I think it's going to be a very stale, very chess matchy kind of fight, and I think it's going to be won by Khaos Williams, landing more shots each and every round. 30-27 unanimous decision, but maybe there's a chance a judge could go another way. I'm going to say 2 30-27 scorecards, 1 29-28 scorecard for Matthew Semelsberger, as in they gave him 1 round, but he's still going to lose. Khaos Williams, unanimous decision. Moving on up the card, Kanaka Murata versus Virna Jandiroba. I think this fight is going to be very interesting. And I'm going to go with Virna Jandiroba getting a submission win in the second round against Kanaka Murata. I think Murata's going to push her up against the cage early. Murata's a very strong girl. I think she'll use that against Jandiroba early on in this fight. Push her up against the cage, hold her there, start stomping on the legs, start kneeing up the fire, start punching to the body. And I think Virna Jandiroba is going to use like Camur attempts, maybe roll for a leg or something against the cage. And I think she's just going to try and... She's going to try and do what Dhiego Ferreira did to Gregor Gillespie, but it's actually going to work this time, in my opinion. She's going to go for jiu-jitsu positions and win the scrambles based on that, rather than trying to just grapple over underhooks with Kanaka Murata against the cage. And I think Virna Jandiroba is going to have enough submission attempts to pull off a win in the later rounds. She's going to attack so many of them that eventually Kanaka Murata is going to give up a bad position. I'll actually go with Virna Jandiroba getting this one done by... arm triangle. I think they're going to be in a scramble. Jandiroba's going to be going for a leg. She's going to use that to get on top of Kanaka Murata, who's been trying to take down Jandiroba for the first 2 rounds. At the end of the second round, Murata's going to start to slow down a little bit, and Jandiroba's going to take over with an arm triangle on the ground after transitioning from a leg lock, using it to get on top of Kanaka Murata. Moving on up the card, Aleksa Camur versus Nikolai, his surname, Negumereanau. I'm going to go with Aleksa Camur. And I think he wins this one by probably decision. I think he just sits there, lackluster contest, lands some decent shots, sticks the jab on Nikolai, and I think he's going to win it based on that. Great fighter. I think maybe Nikolai's going to have some moments where he goes for like a big exchange and comes rushing forwards. But I think Aleksa Camur is going to be able to ride out those storms and just win the middle ground of the fight. Maybe Nikolai's going to have the moments where he actually rocks Aleksa Camur and has some good moments where he lands a couple of shots against the cage. But I think between all of those moments, Aleksa Camur is going to be landing the overall more shots. And I think he's going to win the fight based on that 30-27 unanimous decision to Aleksa Camur. Moving on to the main card, Matt Brown versus Dhiego Lima. I'm going to go with Dhiego Lima. I'm going to go with a lead hook KO. It hurts me to say that about Matt Brown, but I think this is it. I think Matt Brown has taken a little bit too much damage. He's going to go in there, look to try and pressure Dhiego Lima, and I think it's going to backfire on him when Dhiego Lima lands that perfect lead left hook. He landed it on Chad Laprise before in his career. I think he's going to go for it again here against Matt Brown. Not only because I think it's his move, but also if you look in previous fights of Matt Brown, that check hook landed from Miguel Beza. I'm sure Dhiego Lima looks at that and thinks, I've got a fucking wicked check hook. Miguel Beza landed a brutal check hook on Matt Brown rushing in, because Matt Brown does rush in with his hands down. He likes to put pressure on young guys, and if they aren't ready for the UFC, Matt Brown's going to walk all over him. But I think Dhiego Lima's going to hold his ground as Matt Brown tries to break the distance, and I think he's going to catch him with a check hook, put Matt Brown down, and finish him at the end of the first round by TKO. Dhiego Lima gets it done. Moving on up the card, Wellington Turman versus Bruno Silva. I'm going with Bruno Silva. I think he's going to have a ton of nervous energy. I think he's going to go crazy and blitz straight after Wellington Turman. And I think he's going to land a KO blow on Wellington Turman. Now, Wellington Turman, after I made this prediction, showed up with Gyno. And that seems to be a common theme in the UFC now. Not really a common theme, but on this card it is anyway, because we'll talk about the main event in a second. But either way, I'm going to go with Bruno Silva. And I think he gets this one done by a brutal KO in the first round over Wellington Turman. Turman's coming off a first round KO loss. Bruno Silva's got KO power, and he hasn't been in the cage for a while, so I think he's going to be very jittery to start the fight. And I think that's going to lead to him getting after it early and getting a first round KO over Wellington Turman. Moving on up the card, Julian Erosa versus Choi Seung. I'm going to go with Julian Erosa, dash choke submission. in round 3. I think there's going to be a very, very, very educated fight in the early part of this fight. I think Choi Seung-woo is going to land some good shots, maybe a couple of leg kicks, a couple of jabs as well. Julian Erosa is going to be trying to find his way on the inside, but he's going to keep getting cracked by some shots of Choi Seung-woo. Then in the second round, it's going to get a little bit more scrappy. Julian Erosa is going to start forcing some engagements. Maybe he gets dropped or wobbled, who knows, but he's going to keep swinging and making it a messy fight. Get in the clinch with Choi Seung-woo, land some knees, try and go for some takedowns as well. Just make it a really messy, grindy fight in round 2. Then in round 3, I think Julian Erosa is going to go out messy again, get crazy, start throwing some bombs, and I think he's going to catch Choi Seung-woo trying to be perfect with some of those wild exchanges, and I think he's going to lure Choi Seung-woo into a war. He's not going to win that war with Julian Erosa. Erosa is just the king of making wars out of people, and I think he's going to do that to Choi Seung-woo in round 3. Woo will lose composure in round 3, and I think he'll shoot a bad takedown after getting pressured a little bit by Julian, and I think that's when Julian Erosa is going to latch up the dash choke and get this one done by submission in round 3. Moving on up the card, Marlon Vera versus Davey Grant. War. I assume war from this fight, in all honesty, and I don't assume anything else. I think Marlon Vera is going to go out there, and I think it's going to be a great scrap. I think Marlon Vera is going to definitely get the better of this one, chopping at the legs, going for submissions, having better positions on the ground than Davey Grant. I think his ground game has evolved past the level of Davey Grant's now in the UFC, and I think Marlon Vera is going to have some moments in the fight where maybe he drops Davey Grant, and I just think his chin is too good to be dropped by Davey Grant. He's got an amazing chin, always has done in his career, and I think Davey Grant's going to be swinging big bombs, maybe landing a couple of them, but they're not going to have the same effect that they had on Jonathan Martinez or other opponents that Davey Grant has KO'd. Marlon Vera is going to go out there, and I think he's just going to put a pace on Davey Grant. Maybe a crazy first round where Davey Grant's doing quite good, so I'm going to call a 29-28 unanimous decision for Marlon Vera, rounds 2 and 3. I think he'll eventually put the pressure on Davey Grant as this fight goes on, and Grant's going to maybe swing all of his shots in the first round, not get what he wants out of them, and start to slow down in those later 2 rounds. Marlon Vera gets this one done. Basically the same as the Song Yadong fight, but a little bit more wild, I would assume. And also, I think Marlon Vera is actually going to get his hand raised this time, like he should have against Song Yadong. Marlon Vera gets this one done. Moving on up the card, Aleksei Oleinik versus Sergei Spivak. I'm going to go with Sergei Spivak, round 2, ground and pound TKO. I think they're going to be on the feet for a little bit early. Oleinik's going to try and earn some respect with the hands. I think Spivak's going to be sticking a jab in his face every time he tries to land a looping shot. Oleinik's going to shoot for a takedown at the end of round 1, or in the midway point of round 1. Sergei Spivak's going to stuff it, work his way back to his feet. If he does get taken down, that's going to make Oleinik a little bit more desperate. He's going to shoot again at the end of round 1. I think Spivak's going to land some shots while Oleinik's in on his hips, like some elbows in close. Land some shots there. Oleinik's going to regret shooting takedowns in the future. Round 2, Oleinik doesn't really want to shoot too much. He's going to try and earn respect on the feet again. Spivak's going to crack him with a couple of good shots. Oleinik's going to shoot a bad takedown while being backed up himself, and that's going to lead to Spivak getting good hips over him and maybe taking mount and landing some ground and pound shots on Oleinik in the second round, who's tried to get it to the ground but just can't do it, and Spivak's going to take over with his own grappling in the later rounds and earn himself a TKO by round 2 ground and pound. Moving on up the card, the Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige. I'm going to go with Dan Ige. Dan Ige, as I call him. I think he's going to crack the Korean Zombie with some shots early that he's not going to like, and it's going to lead to a Brian Ortega-esque performance. Ortega landed some good shots on the Korean Zombie, really badly hurt him, and I think it's going to happen here again against Dan Ige. I think Dan Ige is going to land some real hard shots on the Korean Zombie, like Bermudez kind of was in their fight when it happened. Dan Ige is going to land some big shots. Korean Zombie is going to leave himself open, maybe throw a couple of sloppy jabs, get caught over the top by Dan Ige a couple of times, and I think Ige is going to be moving around the outside a lot. Very like Brian Ortega. I just think he's going to crack the Korean Zombie with a bunch of big shots, and the Korean Zombie's not going to really want to walk into any more shots in rounds 3, 4, and 5. And I can see a 4-1 decision for Dan Ige. Maybe a close 1 or 2 for Korean Zombie. Who knows? He might take one of those rounds. But I think eventually Dan Ige's power and his grind is going to take over, and I think the Korean Zombie's going to kind of accept defeat in those later rounds like he did against Brian Ortega, and Dan Ige is just going to be hitting too hard, and the Korean Zombie doesn't want to get KO'd, and I think that's going to be the story of the fight. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. Final scorecards for the main event. 49-46 Dan Ige, 49-46 Dan Ige, 50-45 Dan Ige. Like and subscribe. Toodle pip.